Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. This is session number 17 of Season 7, when we are going to discuss Episode 3. Having just discussed Episode 2, we are moving straight on into Episode 3 this time. And Episode 3 will present us with a fun and exciting milestone. Our first battlefield corpse of Season 7. Not the last. Well, I mean, I know we got corpses, but they were very minor characters in episode 1, right? That was just a very brief kind of warm-up. We kill off our first major character in episode 3.
As Galdor said in the last episode, that wasn't a battle.
That wasn't a battle. That's right. Didn't even count. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So real quick, announcements tonight, just to let folks know we are beginning to move now that we are past Myth Moot, which is such great fun. Moving on, and wait, this is our first SilmFilm since Myth Moot, right? No, we didn't.
No, we just didn't talk about it.
We just didn't talk about it. Okay. Anyway, yeah, it was awesome. We had a great time. Point is, we're moving towards our fall moot season, right? And our fall moot season has a lot of moots in it, starting with Cascade Moot on August 31st, and going to Ranger Moot, and then Stutt Moot over in Germany, New England Moot, Middle Moot, and Carolina Moot, all happening this fall. And then we've got a bunch of moots coming in the spring. Ones that are already open for registration are Sunshine Moot on February 22nd and Willow Moot on April 26th. Back in Europe again. This will be our third European moot in 12 months when we do that then. So that'll be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to Stutt Moot in Germany in October. It'll be my first trip to Germany. So and really looking forward to connecting with our European friends again. Ranger Moot is going to be awesome fun. We're going to be doing a weekend of outdoor reenactments at a Boy Scout camp. It's going to be my Nick, you would love this. My plan, I would really love to see if we could reenact the Battle with the Fords of Isen. Wouldn't that be cool? That would be super fun. That would be super fun.
That would indeed be very interesting.
Yeah. So I want to gain a more intuitive understanding of like how the flow, because Tolkien it's one of the battles. In fact, I would put the Battle of the Fords of Isen as probably the battle in which Tolkien showed himself most invested in the tactics, the battlefield tactics of that. I mean, he spends more time describing the exact tactics of the Battle of the Fords of Isen than any other battle that I know of. So yeah,
he sure does.
Let's do it. It'd be cool. Anyway, so we'll see. It's gonna be great. So, we're on to the map now. However, we're not going to linger on this map because we'll do plenty of map stuff later on as we get into the battlefield tactics today, because we are invested in battlefield tactics in order to try to understand the flow of things in this episode. But first, let's look at the big picture. So episode 3, called The Lord of Dorlomin. Good title, I like that, right? Both pointing to Galdor, and of course the big issue of Hurin and the succession there is a major thing, obviously, that not only happens in this episode but comes up to set it up and everything.
Yeah. It was Alana's suggestion, and definitely it was a solid one.
Oh yeah, it's a great title. So we don't have. This is one, as we said last time, we don't have a full script of this one. This one exists in outline form only, but that's okay. So we're going to kind of talk through the ideas here. So first, conceptually, we're going to go through the details. That is, and there may come a point in our discussion when I'm like, okay, hang on, let's just go through it right now, right? But at least at the beginning here, because we do want to make sure that everyone's able to picture the flow of the action there. That's why we will have some fun maps.
I will say that this is the most granular of. I would say this is probably the most on the ground that we have gotten in a battle sequence thus far.
Right. Right. Yeah, we've had some yeah, mostly like sort of larger objectives and major kind of plot turns and things. There were a few things like in the Dagor Aglareb with the, the earthworks at, in the Fens of Serech and stuff where there were some specifics going on there, but yeah, no, I thought that this was interesting. Yeah, exactly. As David Michael says, it's warm up for later in the season. Yeah, there'll be plenty of this to come.
Get
later
your
on.
tier counters out.
Exactly. Yes, we're gonna have probably our first few tiers of the season here in this episode. So, the battle, well, by the way, this leads to the question, would Galdor consider this a battle? I suppose he probably would. Right?
Yeah, I would say.
The other was...
It's big enough for that.
It's big enough for that, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we get a battle in the north of Dorloman. We get a major incursion of the orcs from the north. Fingon calls for aid. The men of Dorloman respond. And all three of them, that is Galdor and Hurin and Huor, all go to the battle. Now, let's focus first on the lead up to that, right? Because the actual combat, or actually, hang on a second. The B plot is the elf-centric politics and battle plans in Mithrim. Let's actually start there. Let's start with Fingon's side, and then we'll come back and talk about what's going on with Galdor and Hurin and Huor, and then that will lead us into looking at the tactics and stuff like that. So let's start with the really big picture. So first of all, what are we... we are suggesting in this episode that there's basically a kind of an active frontier in the north of Hithlum?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what's the consequence of the siege breaking?
Right.
And the answer is, well, not a lot, but
right.
You'd think it would mean that Hithlum is a little busier defending itself from incursions than it used to be.
Right.
Yes.
And
you
of
would
course,
think.
Yeah, exactly. And if we go back to the big map, the big map doesn't even help because, of course, the map cuts off the top of Hithlum, right?
Yeah.
But it's open at the top, right? So, I mean, there are no defenses from the north. You can't really stop orcs as long as there's no, without the leaguer in place, right? If you're not like out there patrolling in Fauglith and stuff, or Ardgowan as was, then you're not really going to be able to stop orcs from being able to come down from the north in Hithlum.
Right. So presumably from time to time it happens just for Morgoth to poke them and see what's up.
Right. And because really that's one when I'm thinking about times in the Silmarillion text when particular there are particular places in the geography of Beleriand that are always sort of strategically crucial, right? The Tolsirian, right, is the biggest one, right? But the idea there, right, the fall of Tolsirian is such a big deal. Not only because, like, in some ways, like, I'm always kind of tempted in some ways to think like, oh yeah, well that's really important because now they could just march a big army down in the south and attack things, and that's true. But really, on a like month to month basis, the real danger there is that now roving bands of orcs can just be wandering, have free reign to just kind of wander about and cause trouble, and presumably that's going to be the situation in Hithlum, in northern Hithlum as well.
And I think
we'll show it more in the Turin seasons when that exists elsewhere, but yeah, we wanted to give a taste of that here.
Yeah.
I think at this time it would be rather difficult for a large army to march out from Angband and come all the way down into southern Beleriand. I feel like that would be an overextension, because that would leave Hithlum issuing out from Barad Ethel
behind
the
them.
That's a bad.
Yeah, I mean, you would clearly have at least potentially, supply line issues and stuff like that if you're marching an army down and you've got, as you say, you've got Ithilcirion behind you. You've got Nargothrond somewhere or other, even Doriath, which is right there, right? I mean, you're... I agree, an army of orcs, just like in the middle of Talith Dirnan or something, is going to be vulnerable from multiple sides.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're also on the western coast of Beleriand. The elves are really able to move people, and as we see, people and supplies around very quickly because of Círdan. So it would be logistically easier to make a breakthrough in eastern Beleriand, but as we've discussed earlier, like the marches of Maedhros have been restored.
Yes.
So you're gonna have that's more difficult strategically.
Yes. Yeah. So it really does seem actually. I mean, there's the Dorthonian issue, right? Dorthonian is just a lost cause. But it's also a sort of a self-contained lost cause, right? Not only just by the topographically, right, by the mountains, but you've got got the girdle of Melian right to the south. You've got the March of Maedhros to the east, right? So, in a sense, apart from getting rid of Ladros and the sons of Finarfin, the destruction of Dorthonian doesn't gain Morgoth all that much as far as access to the rest of Beleriand is concerned.
Right. The main accomplishment there was cutting off east from west, to make it much more difficult for them to move back and forth.
Well, and
it doesn't quite allow him to launch his attack on Beleriand.
Right, and to secure Anfalgwith, because certainly the Feanorians, just as an army of orcs would be vulnerable down in West Beleriand, an army of Feanorians would be very vulnerable trying to cross Anfalgwith. Yeah. Which they used to do all the time.
Right.
So that is the main change there.
Yeah.
Right. That's precise. So securing Dorthonian, as you say, it gives them a platform from which to hold the Anfalgwith, which they would not be able to do. Like, they wouldn't have any bases on the other side. That's a lot of territory to cover just patrols.
Yes.
Right. Whereas if an army, as you say, if Maedhros ventured in from the east or Fingon from the west, they have a large base in Dorthonian to help them repel.
So this is really important to review, not only because, of course, we need to be thinking about this in practical terms, but I'm just trying to. I think it's going to be important, even just to not only thinking tactically, but like emotionally, conceptually, right? When they march out onto Anfalgwith at the end, like that fact is going to be a big deal, right? Like even just we have the guts to march an army out here is going to be a statement, on their part. Like that's going to be a big deal, and I think it's important for us to be. I mean, this is useful for me to kind of think this through in this way, to kind of, because I want to make sure that we feel the implications of what we're doing and of what's going to be happening. Okay. So what this means then, yes, bands of Orcish raiders, now that Tol Sirion has fallen, bands of Orcish raiders will be free to come through the pass, still, mostly.
Sneak through this point, because they've retaken the island of Tol Sirion, but they can't hold it. If an army were to come through there, they're out of there. They're not going to be able to hold that.
Right. They have a very small garrison posted there. It's not a tower with a stronghold anymore.
Right. So they don't have. So that's when Fingon and Tol Sirion were in place. Sorry, not Fingon. Finrod. Apologies. Yeah. When Finrod and Tol Sirion were in place, they had a plug in that hole, right? Like the enemy could not come through.
Right.
When Sauron was there... Sorry, go ahead. They
could house a large enough force to be able to patrol that valley so nobody was getting through there at all.
Yeah, that's right. When Sauron was holding it, it was an open door. The floodgates were open into West Beleriand and conceivably. Again, marching an army would be a big deal, but lots of bad stuff could come through. And that was the situation in episode 1, right? What was what the whole skirmish was about, right? That the increasing sort of desperation of the men of Brethil as orcs were a continual and increasing threat coming through Tolsirian, right?
Yes. Though the orcs were engaged in a lot of road building, bridge building, etc. So the idea that you could just march a giant army in there,
right? No,
not
it's
really. So
right.
they were trying to prepare to be able to do.
Yes.
We're taking over this area.
Sauron
so we saw
was setting up his infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. So we saw the beginnings of that, but he was not able to complete that project.
Right.
So
so that was the concern in episode 1, from the Brethil perspective, which we got in episode 1. Okay, so then after Tolsirian falls, the good guys as you say, they retake the island, Nick. Right. So we have a garrison there, but it's no longer a plug like it used to be. It's a I don't know what a screen. It's a
like they're probably patrolling the Vale, but they
could alert others to the presence of an infiltrating army, but they couldn't stop it themselves.
Right. But they would be able to stop just like armed bands of orcs from coming in and
They are probably orcs stationed at the Ferns of Sarek, in the fortifications of the Ferns of Sarek there. So they're faced off against a larger force all the time.
Right.
So they can't spend a lot of time going out there and looking for little bands of orcs roaming through.
Yeah. Little question there. Why wouldn't Fingon stomp them? The orcs in the Fens of Sarek.
Because that would mean that he would have to march out from... He would either have to march out from Barad Ethel, or he would have to march his army all the way down and around and risk having somebody come up and either take Barad Ethel or come in from the north. So that's part of what these guys are doing, is actually they're putting pressure on Fingon and keeping him from doing just that sort of thing.
Okay. Because I would think that I mean, certainly the distance between Barad Ethel and the Fens of Sarek is way less than the distance from Thangorodrim, right? So he could easily get to Fens of Sarek and back before, Gothmog could lead an army out from Thangorodrim to get, to go to
If they have a good idea, if they have good intel, which they may or may not at this point.
Also, recall that there are tunnels.
The tunnels, right.
That were built right around the Fens of Sarek and out into Enfalglith, so
they can't be confident of the troop movements.
Right,
of the enemy.
They would not necessarily know how many they were up against until they got there.
Yeah.
So it is a pretty risky proposition to try to rout them unless you are coming with a good force.
Right. Any move in force from Fingon takes the risk that a Balrog and a bunch of orcs pop out of one of the tunnels behind them, and now they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's probably a steady flow of armies, not a steady flow, like a sporadic flow of armies coming out from Angband, going up over the
Erethryn? Yeah.
Right. And so this battle that he's fighting in this episode, he's probably fought a couple of times already.
Right.
Right. And so every time they're like, okay, things have calmed down. Wait, we look out from Barad Ethel, we can see another army of orcs. They're not coming into us. They're going up and around. Well, we got to get ready to handle that.
Yeah. Right. So, right. Yes.
By putting pressure on Fingon, Morgoth is preventing exactly the sort of response that you're describing.
And so I imagine, just kind of looking at the map for a second, just glancing at the map of Hithlum for a second, this is going to have the effect. I mean, we don't know exactly to what extent the elves were living in the northern half of Hithlum in the first place, but at this point, the elves, the elves are certainly living south of the lake, right? I mean, you would keep the lake as a kind of frontier there?
Yes.
They're on both sides of the lake.
We
just like the old days.
Yes, the original encampments on both sides of the lake are still in place.
Right.
but the concentration of population is around Lake Mithrim, not up in northern Hithlum.
Right.
And anyone who is still up in those regions would be in kind of a no man's land sort of location.
Yeah.
So I don't know where exactly we want to plant Anile in all of this, but he is distinctly not at Lake Mithrim.
Yes.
Right.
So he is elsewhere. And he's one of those on our own roaming elves.
Right. Though you would think that in the somebody like Anile, that is somebody deliberately living on his own in a quasi, eremitical existence, right, could hole up somewhere relatively secret and secure where he wouldn't be worried about bands of orcs sniffing him out.
Because he just hides when they come by.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that could be happening. He might not be the only one up there. So there could be some elves in the northern area, but we're talking that type of situation, not a whole community that is like the villages are being burned by the orcs.
Exactly, right. Yeah, there wouldn't be villages up there, or at least not anymore. Again, if there were, they'd have moved
They've been
down.
abandoned.
Yeah. And so that's what I was. One of the things that I'm thinking about is like, are there ways in which post Dagor Bragollach, there have been sort of like cultural or like demographic shifts within Mithrim?
Yes.
Yeah.
The long piece is over.
The long piece is over.
And
is this...
like just like we don't picnic out on the plains anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not nearly as desirable a spot anymore, but yes, no, exactly. So this river, which is not named, right? The one that comes down from the north and comes into Lake Mithrim in the middle?
That I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tolkien did name a lot of things.
Right. Names of rivers were some of his favorites, but yeah.
I am unaware of the name of that river.
Okay. So, but just, I mean, given the fact that it's literally the one feature that we get on the map in North, and that it comes down to Lake Mithrim and would essentially shelter potentially both sides of the lake, essentially. Yeah. I'm imagining that if I'm Fingon, I'm using that river as the frontier, that I'm like, no orcs across here, right? Like, I'm gonna work. Our armies are going to make darn sure, for the sake of like domestic security, that we don't let any orcs cross that river.
Right.
Yes. So that is one of his early tactics here, is to prevent that. Assuming that their goal was to cross at a particular river crossing that we invented.
Right.
But because there is population around the lake, even if they don't cross the river, if they continue traveling, they're going to reach the population.
Yeah.
Because there are elven settlements on the western side of the river, further south.
Okay. Well, I would say, so if we have that an image of that section on the map, that would be great. I would say that if I'm Maglor, here we go, perfect. So if I'm Maglor, when I move to the northern side, because he moves from the southern side to the northern side. That's correct. After when Fingolfin shows up.
Yeah. Right.
From the north to the south.
From the north to the south.
From the north to south. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But I would say that original encampment. Okay, so that's actually Maedhros's encampment, right?
In the north.
No, Maglor sets up there. Whatever. Somebody sets up there.
The Feanorian encampment is at the place where the river runs into the lake on the northern side.
Yes.
The Feanorians removed to the southern side of the lake.
Yes.
Probably at the mouth of the other river, the north-flowing river.
Right. But I would say that the Feanorian encampment was on the
west side.
Well, I was going to say on the eastern side of the river, because it's a more secure place to be.
It is more secure because it's surrounded by rivers on both sides.
Right. And then the mountains on from the front. So you fortify the area towards the mountain.
Makes sense.
Right. So that area is where most of the northern half of the the elvish city of Mithrim.
Yeah,
is
so you're
located.
saying like the place where the words Lake Mithrim are written on the map.
Right,
basically.
in that lower
In
corner
that,
there,
in that place there is
Yeah.
where. So this is where. So the Feanorians originally set up camp here, and then
Right.
they move. And you're suggesting they move over to the western side, where the
would
MIT
say,
are down here in Mithrim.
yeah, I would say,
Yeah.
where the area above the MIT.
Yep.
Because they want to be on the opposite side.
Right. Right.
So
But
they
still with that river,
right.
yeah,
Right.
nearby. Because just for transport reasons, you want to be on the river.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the general idea there is that, yes, if Fingon guards the river, he prevents orcs from reaching most of his people, but not all. There are settlements on the western side.
Right. Okay. So that right. So we've got some over here. So basically, not to introduce spoilers for our tactical discussion here, but though the map itself's already doing that a little bit, so that's fine. The Black X here, Marie, which is where the battle is taking place, right? Basically means that this army of orcs has been intercepted more or less at the last minute, because there are elves living down here. Like if you follow that path down there by the lake, so they're not so very far from where actual elves are.
That's about a day's march, I would say.
Yeah.
It's about 20 miles. I would wager.
Okay. So okay, good. So basically the men of Dorlomen, which is our red line here, they're going to be basically riding through those elven towns, right? Those elven settlements on the way north to intercept the orcs. Right.
You would think, yeah.
Bro.
We might not show them doing that.
That's fine.
In the sense that I think we will show them in the mountains and then cut to them arriving wherever they're going to arrive.
Sure.
But yes, there could be elven settlements that they pass through.
Yeah. By the way, my personal vote for where Anael is living is in the mountains at the northern tip of the mountains of Mithrim.
Yes.
Right.
Like a cave concealed.
Yes, sure.
Way up there. So that like it's like north, like outside the settlements, but it's not like way north, and it takes
It's not a ridiculously far away.
It's not ridiculous. It's not, because I mean, Tour's got to get there, right? I mean, Tour's gotta like encounter him, So it can't be too far away, but it does need to be remote. And if it's, anyway, that strikes me as a reasonably plausible place for Anael to kind of hole up there.
Okay.
Anyway, whatever. That's a digression. Okay, so back to Fingon then. So Fingon is, he's gonna have two concerns, right? On the one, in the like his short term or immediate term concerns are the security of Mithrim and Dorlomen, right? They're occasional invading armies of orcs, and they're keeping him busy, which is clearly one of the things they're intended to do, right? And so there's no way that he can keep them out, so he just has to keep swatting them when they come in. So this is, on the one hand, this incident is just a total, like, day at the office for the High King of the Elves these days, right? This is the kind of thing that happens. This is not the first time. This won't be the last time.
This is probably a larger group than has heretofore come, because Dorlomen's been not involved up until this point. Up until this point, he was able to just bulldoze them and move on.
Right. The implication is that this is a larger incursion, and that's why Fingon calls for aid, and that's why they don't behave the way Fingon expects them to behave, because apparently this has happened in the past, and he knew where to wait for him and what to do, and then they don't do it. So this is showing a progression that has reached this point instead of.
So how do the orcs behave differently as a group?
They don't cross the river where he thinks they're gonna.
Ah, I see. Okay. Because normally their priority was get across the river and then try to drive straight down as fast as possible into the meaty bits.
Apparently that has happened before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So they take Fingon by surprise by not crossing the river, and he's like, "Ooh, we've got to get over there somehow to defend against them."
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a fort. It's not like it's incredibly difficult for them to manage that, but it definitely, now they have to completely change what they're set up to do.
Right. Okay. And it is bigger than usual. So I guess, so as I said, on the one hand, there's the sort of short-term, immediate-term question. The other thing, again, I'm Fingon, right, is thinking big picture, right? Thinking about...
Right, how does this fit?
Right, how does this fit? Both, like, what is Morgoth up to? Like, presumably not just throwing away groups of orcs for no reason, right? Like, and secondly, what do we do? I mean, sitting here and swatting these groups of orcs when they come in has been working out so far, but what are we accomplishing? What you know, how can we, is there a way that we could do? So the question about, like, could we attack the Fens of Serech? You know, is there a way that we could somehow join with, you know, the people of the South, both the men of Brethil and you know, the, Nargothrondrim, to, I always have a hard time with that word.
The Elves of Nargothrond.
The Elves of Nargothrond, yeah. No, but it's a fun word to say. It's just a hard word to say.
Yes.
Gondolindrim flows more simply.
Easier than, really? I feel like it's the opposite.
No,
Nargothrondrim.
Nargothrondrim I have a hard time with. It's the Throndrim part. It's the R's there that get me. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, he could be thinking of, you know, like, should we strategically be joining up with them, right? You know, so basically, it seems to me important, right, that we show. We don't have to, like, give lots of detail. I'm not suggesting a scene. Remember in the movies, right, when Faramir's pointing at the map?
We talked about that many times.
Right, exactly. I'm not suggesting a scene like that.
Good, because we vetoed a scene like that.
I figured you did.
Despite also possibly suggesting...
Yeah, exactly.
When Fingon calls for aid, he'd pull out his map and be like, all right, so... here's where we are on the map. Here's where Círdan is, and we want you to take a message.
Right.
And it's like, let's not.
Yeah, exactly. No, so my point is, I'm not suggesting that, but but what I am saying is that I think it's important for us. One of the things that we can clearly establish is that Fingon is worried about the big picture. Like, he has some sense that, like, okay, sitting here and defending our lands against bands of orcs is not accomplishing anything long term. Right, like we're not getting anywhere, and what's worse, for all we know, we could be the fact that Morgoth keeps sending bands of orcs down here for us to attack should lead us to believe that this is where he wants us, right? Like, he's doing this for a reason, right? And so are we just, in fact, setting ourselves up for whatever it is, whatever his next steps are going to be? Right. So he's got to have those, but then also, so not only that, not only, like, might they be, well, not doing harm, but setting themselves up for future problems, or at least, you know, falling into whatever trap or plan Morgoth has coming next. But they're certainly not accomplishing anything positive.
They don't want to be reactive.
Yes, they're doing nothing but reacting, and he can't think of anything else to do, right? And even to be thinking about, like, are there ways that we can go? Like, basically, I want to show that Fingon he's ready for Maedhros to come.
Oh, yeah,
right?
I understand where you're going.
Yeah.
So,
but he is working with Círdan he's using the advantages he does have to help him make this as costly a pursuit as possible for Morgoth.
Yeah.
So the goal behind this episode, other than the whole Dorloman storyline, is that we have not seen Fingon as High King.
Right.
Really.
Right.
We have seen him on screen, and he was High King. So the first episode of season 6, he's at Tolsirian talking with Finrod about where things are going. So we saw his perspective on what it meant to be High King at the time, but we haven't really seen him in action yet.
And that was a heck of a long time ago.
It surely was. And so this is our first time seeing him on screen in action as High King, and we're now in episode 3 of the season. He's kind of an important character in this season. It would be good to establish him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we wanted to see, what is his approach? Like, what is it he does? How does he prepare for battle, go into battle, lead his guys in battle? Like, what kind of High King is he, and what kind of thinker is he? Because naturally, having Fingon and Maedhros team up will seem a lot better if they bring different
they're a
strengths
good
to the
team.
table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if they complement each other, it'll be
Yeah.
like, all right, this is gonna work.
Right.
So we've already shown neither is doing his planning thing of like, okay, I'm gonna get all my pieces together and I'm gonna set everything in motion. I'm gonna fix all the problems, and he's thinking and planning in that way.
And he's
Fingon-
also Mithros was also manipulating people effectively.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Fingon has to be different and
Yes.
doing
Yes.
things differently and
Yes.
having different strengths that he would bring to the table. So that's part of what we want to draw out in this episode is who is he as a leader? What
Right.
does he look like? How is
Now-
it different than Fingolfin, who we knew?
Yeah.
Yes. So Fingon is more reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is more of a tactician than a strategician,
Strategy and tactics.
Strategy and
Right.
tactics. Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so to kind of give an example, so chess, right?
Yes.
People who put study into the game of chess will beat me 100% of the time.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
Right.
I have not put any study into the game.
Right.
I'm not. If somebody hasn't studied chess, I'm a good chess player to that person.
Right. Tactics, not strategy. Right.
Once that person has studied chess, I'm out. Right. However, I discovered in my early 20s, I discovered Byzantine chess,
Okay.
which is a round board and the diagonals all spiral in towards the center.
Okay.
All right. So when I would play so I had a lot of friends who I knew one guy who was like a ranked chess player, and I played chess with very good chess players, and they always beat me. But when we brought up Byzantine chess and I played one of these guys with him, I beat him 4 times in a row.
How many
Because
times
Because
had
he didn't
played it
have the
before?
strategy. Yeah.
I had never played it before either. We found it at a yard sale. We brought it out. We played it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Right.
it wasn't like I came in with a home field advantage there.
I was just checking. I mean, it was
That's
like, look
fair.
at
It's a
my
fair
set
question.
that only I know how to play.
No.
Right.
It's nothing like that. Because I was able to
Yeah.
see that.
You came up with something to
Right.
work with.
I was able to see that the bishops were then able to spiral all the way into the center
Right.
of the board,
Right.
which I was able to catch them by surprise often.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So Fingon is that kind of chess player.
Right.
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 So reactive, but not a lot of strategy behind it.
So
right.
he's going to be frustrated because he can't think of any strategies.
Right.
Like he can't.
Yes.
So, I mean,
If only he had someone.
if only he had
He
someone
knows that
who
if
was
he
a devious,
leaves
big
Baron
picture thinker.
Ethel,
Yeah.
if he leaves Baron Ethel, Mithrim's toast.
Right.
Right. So
But he realizes he's pinned down. He's been pinned down this way.
Right.
But he
Right.
doesn't see his way out of it. So I would think, therefore, that one of the thing that we would want to do then is to show that basically his captains, right, have great respect for him. Like he's an excellent battlefield
he's
leader.
very charismatic.
And so everyone's like, Fingon, you are a great king, you are a great leader. And he's like, yeah, but we're helpless, right? Like he would be very aware of his limitations of strike, that he does not have a strategy, that he doesn't know where to go and what to do. He might even lament, one thing that Fingolfin had was vision,
Yes.
right? Fingolfin had vision. Didn't always pan out, right? But he had vision. Fingon has no vision, right? He has no, he doesn't see a big picture. He doesn't have a plan.
And I'm sure that it's occurred to him, hey, we should get the band back together and all do something at once. But he can't see he doesn't see how that works together.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have a plan to propose to people to get them on board to do it.
Right. Yeah. So that is what we will deal with in episode 4.
Yes.
Will be Mithras being like, hey, here's an idea, and Finger going, yeah, really? You
Right.
sure? You know,
Right.
like there's some holes in that idea, and therefore Finger would never have gotten there on his own.
Right. But there are also, I can see the exciting opportunity to
That
show
he
there are
wants
holes that
to.
he can fill.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we wanted to do here is to show where he is, what he's trying to accomplish, what his limitations are.
Yeah. The fact that he
what he
can
would bring to
whistle
the
up
table.
Círdan is such a great sign, right? That
Yes.
Right?
Maedhros would just love seeing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is he has strengths, he has things
Yeah.
to bring to the table, and he has the desire to do more than what he's doing, but
Yes.
hasn't got there yet as far as a viable plan.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, got it. And so it's his, but so it's his skill, not only his like battlefield, not only his tactical skills, and not only his battlefield leadership skills in the sense of his, I mean, that means like his courage and his, you know, his ability, his charisma, his ability to lead people into battle and get them to follow him into battle.
His height.
His height.
It's an important part of
There's a very strong correlation in Tolkien between height and leadership ability.
That's because there's a real correlation. What is it? It's over 80% of CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies are over 6 feet tall.
I mean,
That's not by accident.
Napoleon did just fine.
He's in the 20%. Yeah.
And also, he wasn't shorter than average either. Like, he was like...
Okay, well, you said over 6 foot, and I don't know
Yes,
how tall
I know,
he was,
but-
but I know he was not over 6 feet.
No, but nobody was over 6 feet except
Yeah.
George
I mean,
Washington.
And
George
Henry
George
VIII.
Washington is a fantastic example.
George Washington was what, 6'4"? I mean, he was
6'2".
Yeah,
at
still he
least.
was crazy.
Still a giant
tall.
among men.
Yes.
Yeah,
His time.
and big. Not
Yeah.
not just
Yeah. Henry
big, strong
VIII
guy.
also. Henry VIII was also over 6 feet tall. Which,
Big guy.
monster.
yeah, he was enormous. Anyway, okay, so slightly digressing, but it's all good. So again, so not only tactical skill, but also like how people respond to him. Like the crucial thing I think is to show, you know, not only his willingness to be like, okay, let's call in Círdan, let's call in Galdor, right?
Yes.
But the way they respond to him.
Yeah.
Right. The
People-
respect that they give
Yes.
to him.
Yeah, the people outside of his direct control respond to him very positively. The people who are directly under his authority, immediate
Yeah,
obedience.
they would
He tells them what
they
to
would
do.
run
they
through
do
a
it
wall for him.
immediately.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's different from the way the Maedhros's people would do that.
Yes.
Like Maedhros's people are more like a cult. Like they would follow
The
him. run
Hadorians
into a
are
wall
a
for him.
little cult-like. Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, it's true you can't leave,
Yeah. Right.
and you do have to swear this oath.
There are some similarities.
So-
Yeah.
Fair,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. But
Almost
yeah,
fanatical
like,
devotion. Yeah. No.
Right.
Exactly. It's yeah.
yeah,
Right.
to end up in the Feanorian camp, you had to have decided that it was a good idea to follow Feanor, possibly when he left Tyrion to go to Formenos.
Mhm.
Right.
And you've been following ever since through
Yes.
a lot of very questionable decisions, and you're still there. So
Right.
you had to have bought into the idea that, but it's all worth it in the end,
Yes.
somehow.
Yes.
Right.
Because if you didn't, like, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah. The fanatical devotion on the part of Maedhros's soldiers has to do with their belief in him as an idea,
Yes.
right? Of the
Yes.
as the fulfiller of the Feanorian oath.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the devotion of Fingon's soldiers stems from this is a great king that I
Personal
love, and I
loyalty,
would
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a different animal. Results are not entirely
Disparate.
different.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to say. So I agree. Establishing all these things about Fingon is really important. As I say, the Círdan element was my favorite part of this whole thing because again, it's such a crucial thing to show, especially in terms of what does he bring to the partnership with Maedhros here, right? Like, I can send out a message and Sindar come.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's.
That's the thing Maedhros can't
What
do.
do you got, Maedhros?
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
and that's, I know you had wanted it to not look like Mithril shows up and says, "I have this great plan," and Fingon is like,
Okay,
let's do that," and there be like just have him dragged along through this whole thing, and then he dies. Like that is not a story we want to tell.
Right. No.
So this was to give him his own person before Mithril is even on screen.
Yeah, Marie, I don't know how deep you are into these conversations, but it would be pretty great if, as Mithril is laying out any parts of his plan, Fingon is able to at least understand what's happening and pick up and say, "Oh," and then we can do that. He fills in the things that Mithril hasn't told him yet, and maybe Mithril has already made that decision. Maybe he hasn't, but like Fingon's right there with him as soon as he has.
I would think he would be quick to catch the vision that Mithril gives him. Yeah.
Yes.
And would certainly improve upon it in various ways, and would be perfectly capable of seeing all of the things that Mithril can't do that he could do, especially when it comes to
the man, the Sindar.
Foreign relations, as it were.
Fingal attaching himself to Fingon is not the non-starter it is.
Yeah. Still unlikely, but it's
They can at least have that conversation, and they're totally going to get a couple of guys out of Doriath to join
That's right. Thing. That's right. Yes, 100% more people from Doriath will join the Near Knife than would have had. Agreed. No, I think this is great. So basically, these kind of establishing elements for Fingon's character are really the whole point of it. Like the B plot does not itself have drama per se, other than the orcs are coming and oops, they've stolen a strange march on us, and we've got to, and there's a certain amount of urgency on the edge of panic that we. I mean, there's that element of drama to it, but there's no like there's a conflict that needs to get resolved in the B plot necessarily.
Right. The plot gets resolved the problem through the action.
Yeah.
There are orcs. We want there to be no more orcs. Oh, look,
we want there to stop being orcs, yes.
Right. Yes. So that was the dilemma, and we fix it, but how he fixes it is supposed to tell the story.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. That makes perfect sense. Okay, so then going back to the A plot. So at what how early in the episode does the call arrive to Dorloman?
Last episode.
No, sorry. Wait. Oh, it came
at the end of episode 2.
Yeah.
Right.
So the tag was Galdor getting a message, and you don't hear what the message is.
Okay.
So presumably it was this message.
This message. Okay, so it is this right. Okay, right.
The best place to start the plot of episode 3 was in the end
of episode 2. Gotcha. So the call to battle is the premise and beginning of the A plot in this episode. Okay, that's what I was forgetting.
It was
or not
so
quite
we
putting
didn't
together.
have to like show Fingon sending out messenger, show the messenger delivering the message, and like just repeat that 3 times on screen. Didn't seem the best way to handle it.
Yeah. Right. Sure. No worries. Okay. That makes sense. So from the beginning, we're setting out. So the very first sort of question is the who's going question, and this is the Harith being upset that both of her boys are going off to battle. Like, shouldn't the spare stay home? Isn't that kind of how that's supposed to work, right? How is it that we're not making that look foolish?
We're putting the emphasis on, look, I am standing up here and asking every other family to send their sons out to battle. How bad does it look if I don't take mine with me? Mm-hmm. So it's an honor thing, and because this
and
is
they do have an heir ready to go,
right?
Or does he come?
He comes too.
Yeah, well, okay, never mind.
That's the thing.
But they're humans. It's not like they haven't thought they don't have a plan of succession.
They have talked about the succession.
Yeah, they know the plan, but there's a couple of ideas here, and one is that we know that every able-bodied man in Dorloman is going to march to the Near Knife. Mm-hmm. Right. So there is no leave the spare behind, designated survivor stuff happening then. It's just Marwyn.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And a 9-year-old Turin. So we had to show that that was kind of part of their culture of we're just going to go for it
Yes.
to make it make sense later. So that's his answer is I can't ask other men to do what I wouldn't do myself.
Okay.
And if I'm going to ask them to risk their sons, I've got to risk my sons. And, you know, much must be risked in war. Let's go for it.
Right. And if it's, it does make a certain amount of sense. I mean, it's one thing for, so I'm thinking of like, what's his name? The Gondorian king whose heir was it Faramir, the name of the heir who sneaked out with the battle war against the Wayne Riders, the king whose line was wiped out right before
I forget the
Yarnil.
names, but yeah, how did you end up with a ruling steward guy?
Yeah. Well, or like the beginning
Eventually.
of the end. Anyway, yeah. So I think Faramir was the name of Ondahere. That's it. Yes, from Ondahere's Folly. I'm like right now in the middle of the Lotro plot segments that were designed around that in Daggerlad.
Okay.
But anyway, Ondahere was the name of the king. And of course, so it's like a big plot point at that moment in Appendix A, right? Where Ondahere and his first son are going off to battle against the Wayne Riders, and they deliberately leave the spare back in Minas Tirith, right? So that like the spare, who was Faramir, I'm pretty sure, sneaks out and follows them, and then they all die, and then that's the problem, right? So that kind of a situation, like it's obviously a thing, but there's also clearly a difference between King of Gondor and Lord of Dorloman. Like they're not very closely parallel situations. And I think it's okay if we establish that sort of difference in culture.
Yeah. The thing to keep in mind is that Hador was the first Lord of Dorloman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Galdor's his son.
Yeah. Right.
Like, we're not too far down the line.
This is not
like
we've
an
only
ancient
passed
lineage.
it once.
Right, we passed it once. And we're really hoping we can pass it a second time.
Right.
But like, let's see how this goes.
Right.
Like so it is very different from Gondor. And therefore I think that idea of like, well, you must reserve the spare so that there's not a contest over the kingship. That's a very late
and especially in
idea.
And I would think especially in the context of Dorloman and its relationship with Mithrim, right?
Yes.
I mean, like it's
they called for aid. We're going to go help them.
Well, and he's not the king, right? I mean, he's Lord of Dorloman, but he's not the king of the land.
He's got a king he's answering to.
Exactly, right? And presumably, like, there's no worry about civil war. Like, the king will, should the entire family get wiped out, presumably Fingon will appoint somebody else. Like, this is going to be under control.
Or something. Somebody will end up in charge. So he does need to leave someone in charge when he goes, so everyone knows who to listen to while he's out of town.
Right.
But he essentially picks Emeldir.
Yeah.
Who's
and that's Galdor's choice.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
She's not in the line of succession.
Yeah.
She's not even of his people. So it's an indicator of I trust you to hold this fort down while I'm stepping away, but not an indication that she would actually be his heir.
No, especially with the
she's pretty old to be.
She's pretty old,
anyway.
exactly for that reason
and
too. Yeah,
not of his people and a woman, and like there's lots of reasons why they probably wouldn't pick her. So this is a little bit like Theoden leaving Eowyn in charge.
Taking Éomer.
Right. You're here. Just take care of everybody while I'm out. Like,
Right.
He doesn't really think that she's going to be a ruling queen of Rohan.
Right.
Not for very long, certainly.
Right.
But
But this
very much like, well, good luck. I hope you don't die. I hope you don't die.
If we
die,
die,
so.
if me and Éomer die,
Rohan's
probably not going to make it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so,
it's going to be moot. No, so okay, but
Right.
but the crucial thing here is that this has massive like cultural and political implications based on what we were discussing in episode 2, right? I mean, you'd have to I would expect there would be a certain amount of surprise, if not grumbling, at the leader of the House of Beor being left in command of the of Dorloman like that.
It is meant to be a bit of a shock.
So so he's making a serious political statement here. I mean, this is I was going to say like a statement of solidarity, but it's kind of beyond solidarity, actually, right? I mean, this is
right. It's closer to unity, than solidarity, and it's the king just called for my aid, and these people have just come to live in my land. They're
Right.
part of us.
Right.
And that's how he's acknowledging that they're a part. Because at some point he's going to have to call on them
Yes.
to go out and fight too.
Yes.
So you can't be strangers, not
Yeah.
part of us,
Yeah.
just guests, and
So-
also be called up to fight. Like, he has to cross them over that boundary into, you're one of us, you're part of our people.
Right.
So it's a politically shrewd maneuver. And so, of course, because I mean, obviously, I'm thinking ahead here too.
Whether it's shrewd or not, he does it.
Right. Well, I mean, or at least he's hoping it. I mean, it is an act of
He's
self-conscious
actively-
shrewdness on his part. He is making a
Yeah.
deliberate political move.
Right.
Yeah.
He is.
Whether or not it's going to pan out or not, it's that's his plan. In other words, when Hurin is gonna propose to Morwen, he would be able to see himself as following step down the path that his father.
Yes.
As
began.
having his father's blessing. Exactly.
Right.
In fact.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Well, that like it was clearly my father's intention that the people of Beor be thoroughly integrated
Yes.
into our culture, and so this is the best way to accomplish that.
Right.
P.S.
And
You're very hot. Yes.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah, he's maybe gonna bungle the proposal a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
I'm not-
he's
We'll get
got
to
it
that.
because this is television.
We'll get to that next episode.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it should also not be understated that this is a demonstration of Galdor's immense respect for Elmeldir,
Yes.
right? Because you have to imagine that when she arrived, right, the two of them sat down, and she told this, like, because he's probably never heard that story from the Beorians themselves.
Right. The story, like what from Ladros on, the whole
Right,
story. Yeah.
Right. Like he's probably heard that secondhand through
Mhm.
Elvish
Sure.
news
Yeah,
going
yeah,
through.
yeah.
Right. Right. And so I imagine that conversation just completely wins him over. Like this woman is phenomenal, and that's when he names her Emeldir Manhart.
Man-hearted. Right. Exactly. So
Yay!
it's Galdor who gives her that very
Yes.
flattering name. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
In this episode.
In this episode. Great. That
Well,
leads.
this is when he says it.
This is when he
Well,
says it.
This is when it shows up on screen.
Gotcha.
Right.
Now
Presumably, it's been used before.
that
Yes.
leads me to another question.
Mm.
If his choice of epithet Emeldir the Man-Hearted is any indication, there's not only to what extent are you guys imagining not only but she is of the people of Beor, why should we listen to her as leader issue? There would also be but she's a woman issue. Would there? To what
There-
extent
Yeah.
do
There
we see that
would be if-
within the
but I
culture
feel-
of the Hadorians?
There might be some grumbling about it,
Mm-hmm.
but this is probably common practice in situations where the men go off to war.
Oh, wait, leaving a woman in charge when the men go off to war.
Right. This is
Eowyn
probably a
esque,
thing that
yes.
happens.
Well, no, because keep in mind, with Eowyn, it was not Plan A. Like it was like Theoden was still like, "Whom shall we leave? There's nobody." Right? And
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
and
wait.
right?
Yeah.
Like he had to get smacked upside the head with that one before he even thought
Right.
of it. But
That's fair.
Yeah.
But
If
but it's
only you
not-
had another relative standing
That's right.
right there.
Yes.
Right. But like a man leaves his home to go hunting, his wife's in charge, not
Right,
his oldest son.
right. Yes. Yes.
know,
Right. Sure. But
But,
But it-
specifically, it's not his wife that he leaves in charge here.
right.
that's true,
Because it is but it is fair to say that the Hadorian culture, like, so we know
the Hadorian culture being more patriarchal,
more
will
patriarchal
certainly
than the
grouse a bit
Yes.
of this.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Right. So calling her man-hearted is to kind of gloss over that and be
Right.
like, "Hey, I know you expect a man in this
He's
position,
one
so
of us.
I gave you
Right.
the." Well, yeah, she's basically a man.
The man-hearted,
It's
yeah.
fine.
She carries a sword.
right. Yeah, you can think of her if it helps. Think of her as a man, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Basically, she puts a sword on. She's a man now. It's fine.
Right. Yeah.
In some cultures that have very strict gender roles, you can cross them under certain circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
and giving her the epithet "man-hearted" would kind of signal to everybody that it's one of those cases where somebody unexpected fills a role, and you're just like, well, I guess they're just acting as a man now.
Right. Right.
Like what was it? King Hatshepsut in
Yes.
Egypt.
Yes.
She was pharaoh.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Not fair.
got-
Right. No, exactly.
so she was called king, not like ruling queen or something like that.
Right.
It was,
Yeah.
well, you're in the role, so you are the person. And so her statues have a little beard, just
Right.
like all the other pharaoh statues.
The exception being made is not, oh, it's okay for women to rule. It's okay for you to be considered in the masculine role under these circumstances.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like
Yeah.
that is how a culture that's not ready for that
Right.
would handle that
Right.
type of
And that's the gesture he's making by calling her the
Yes.
man-hearted.
yeah, to make it fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say, that is a brilliant way to contextualize the whole man-hearted thing, right? This is a huge challenge.
I've been thinking of it. Yeah, it makes me so happy to
Yes.
have, because the simple answer would just be to leave it out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Which I sort of assumed we were going to do for the longest
It's the
time.
one sentence we have about
I
her.
know, right? It's hard to leave out that detail. Like, when the one detail you have about this character is kind of embarrassing, right? So how do you handle it, right? Yeah.
Right. Like, because there's things we can leave out that we've decided are just like, oh yeah, we're not going to make that work on screen. But in this case, we know nothing else about her.
right,
Yeah.
So
No,
it would
I
be
love
a
it.
shame to
I think
not
this is
demonstrating that it's the people who gave her the epithet that are problematic, not us.
Right. Yes.
Hopefully that's what comes across. Although, people can interpret it as they see fit, obviously.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if people don't like it, that's not surprising.
No, it wouldn't be. But anyway, I think it is a brilliant handling of that situation. And anyway, I mean, I really like the way in which we have. It's funny because, this is such a fascinating example when we think back to the decisions that we made way back in the beginning of season 5, about how we were like the whole Nargothrond story and stuff, right? And all of the kind of unanticipated, but in the end rather delightful consequences of those things, like the whole history of the House of Beor, has.
Yeah.
I did not see like matriarchal non-warrior society emerging, really. I was not anticipating that as a long-term consequence of the
And
yet here we are, right?
Aren't you glad that we had enough time to tell that story?
Yeah,
I'm glad.
it was fun. It was, and what's more, like, it's perfect. Like, when you think of how important the female characters are in the line of the House of Beor, right? Especially when you add Andreth in. Anyway, very cool.
Yeah.
It seems to have worked out for us.
Yeah, for sure.
And it leads us to Morwen.
Yes,
that
exactly.
is what that line leads to.
Absolutely.
And hopefully she makes more sense in this context now.
Yeah. No, the way that we have positioned her to be sort of in between the two cultures and part of the merging of the two cultures, and yet I think of the way in which Morwen as being to some extent apart from everyone else, right? Treated as that we get even just the way we get it from the point of view of the Easterlings, right? The way she's thought of as like a witch, right? In the early part of the Turin story, all of these things, like she's a character apart, right? She's anyway. So I what I'm saying is I love the way we're setting that up. I mean, all of this really seems to kind of flow really well into that.
Notice none of them try to marry her.
Right. Yeah, the Easterlings, you mean?
Yeah, they want nothing to do.
Yeah,
with
which is super significant, actually.
Yes.
Like
It's
that
a
would be
huge-
plan.
Is.
That would be plan A in almost any circumstances. Yeah.
And then they meet her and they're like,
no thanks. Actually, we're good.
she's giving off serious cunt peg vibes.
That's right. Actually,
I know a little girl
yes, the hot queen is
named
too
JL, by the
scary.
way.
We're not gonna.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Who
I know a
would
little
be
girl
her
named
kid
JL.
too?
I tell her father, keep the hammers away from her.
Yeah. I mean,
Wait, you know someone who named their daughter JL?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
This is Lynchburg, man.
fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like it's not a strong name. It's just you got to say.
Oh, somebody else does.
There you go.
Okay, well there you go.
Not
It was
shocked.
more popular than I knew as a kid's
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. There you go.
But anyway, that's, I would assume, why people are in the Easterlings are just not that interested
No,
in
yeah.
marrying Morwen.
Exactly.
It's like, you won't wake up the next day.
Yeah. No,
A
but
man
I mean,
can own a woman or he can own a knife. Not both.
Right. Well, no, it's I mean, it's a fascinating situation. I mean, it's such a fascinating testimony to like the strength of her character and her presence, right? Because I mean, the obvious political advantages of I'm going to marry the wife
The
of the
widow
former lord,
of, yeah.
combined with she's also the most beautiful woman in the entire land, right? Like those
Right.
two things together, like that's, you'd think that would be completely irresistible to any Easterling who wanted power and
Yeah.
thought highly of himself, right? And the fact that all of them then come in and they're like, no, no, thank you, right? I mean, it's just I love what that says about Morwen. It's going to be really
Yes.
really fun to do more of
Yes.
that. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Indeed.
Okay. Last things, sort of plot details. One thing that I was noticing was that you guys, one of the things that you were sort of interweaving into the pre-battle sequences of the episode were memories of Gondolin. Like you wanted to talk about how the Gondolin experience has changed.
Yes.
And that's a little bit challenging because on the one hand, we saw what happened to them, right? We have a sense of kind of what they became while they were there, but at the same time, we don't really know what they were like before. I mean, all we get is the foot race,
The
right?
race,
Right.
yeah.
At the beginning of episode
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
which gives us something. Like it's not nothing that we have there, right? And we can certainly see how, like Huor's dreamer, he was a dreamer before he went to Gondolin, right? So I mean, there's some of those things that we already get. The competitiveness, with Hurin and everything. So it's not that we got nothing, but
Well, Hurin feels the change in him is that he feels burdened with glorious purpose.
right, yeah, to coin a phrase, yeah,
Right. He feels like he is
Yes.
personally set on a trajectory to encounter destiny somewhere out there.
right, yep.
I mean, we all are to some extent, obviously, but
Right. No, but I mean, especially like
It's a strong sense for him.
yes.
and he has lots of reason to feel justified in that
Yes.
conviction.
Yeah.
Because
Eagle reasons.
Eagle-related reasons. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Because not once but twice, Eagles took him where
He
he didn't know
convinced-
he'd be able to go.
Turgon, like, if he weren't right about this sense of his destiny, of things to accomplish, surely Turgon would not have given in. Surely, Thorondor
Eagles
would not have
wouldn't have
agreed.
taken-
Yeah,
right, yeah.
exactly. Right.
Right.
So he has all kinds
has
of
a
affirmation.
stamp of approval on this
Yes.
point of view.
Yeah. So he's coming in with almost right, like the almost a stamp of divine approval
Yes.
on in his sense.
For my money, you could take out the almost.
Right. He feels that he has
Yes.
he has this
Mm-hmm.
sort of he still doesn't see it yet. It's not like he's coming with a plan, right?
No.
But
Just
he knows there is a plan that he will meet.
right, exactly. So, and we started addressing this in episode 2, right, where he's going around and he's riling everybody up, and Galdor's like, dude, you know what you're talking about, right? Let's take it down a few notches, right? We're not assaulting Angband today, right? So that exchange at the end of episode 2 was a clear preparation for what we're seeing here. Do we see an advance in Hurin? Like, is his perspective yet? Has it achieved any additional nuance really from episode 2, or is this still just like a continuation of the?
So it's
yeah.
it's tempered. Like he's willing to learn from Dad. Now, Dad also happens to be doing the thing he most wants to do.
It's time to go to
right
battle
now.
now. So that's
Right.
Right.
We're all
So
in.
he's like, great,
Yeah.
let's go.
Here it is.
Yeah.
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 But we're seeing him more in sync with Dad in this episode than
And
he was
following
in the last one.
his dad.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that just occurred to me, I would really love for horses to keep getting shot out from under him during the battle, as a reference to the Battle of Monongahela, George Washington.
Okay.
You
I don't know that one.
what?
No.
Oh my gosh! So Lieutenant Colonel George Washington, like General Braddock's shot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is for context. This is during
In
the French and Indian War,
yeah,
known
yeah.
to non-Americans as the 7 Years World War.
World, yeah.
That George Washington started. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's at this battle. He has to take command of the British regulars, which isn't his job.
Right.
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 But all of the other officers are either dead, wounded, or not willing to put themselves in harm's way.
Right.
Right. So he gets up on a horse, shot out from under him. Gets up on another horse, shot out from under him. I think it happens 3 times. At the end of the battle, he has like 5 bullet holes through his coat and 1 through his hat, which is on his head.
Right. Right.
Right. There's an apocryphal story about him meeting a Native American chief years later who insisted that he shot him many times. And
Right.
And so like there's a book called Bulletproof George Washington that goes into great depth into some of the more apocryphal versions of the story.
Right,
But
right.
like the stuff about the bullet holes and the horses getting shot, like that's what happened.
Right.
You could say the man had a touch of destiny about it.
Right. Okay. Of course, it's going to be hard with a cavalry charge. I mean,
There's not really time for that here.
Yeah.
It could happen once he
Okay.
once he charges into.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. His horse could go out from under him.
Though he'd have to sustain the charge, though. I mean, like.
Yeah, like I said, at the end when
Right.
he
Right.
peters out.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be because
his horse gets
is
shot out
gone.
from under him. He's able to grab onto a spare horse to get back up, but
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it could maybe happen in that context, but there's not an opportunity for him to be resupplied with horses during the sequence in which they're
I'm not
fighting.
talking about somebody
Yeah.
running up to him with a spare horse. I'm saying
Right.
there's dead people who have left horses behind.
Yeah.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but there's still not really time.
It would interrupt the
flow for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we'll come
that's
back to the flow. I am nearly flow prepared. I'm nearly ready to discuss the flow of the battle. I just want to make sure I don't leave behind any of the other things. So, like, for instance, Huor. Tell me more of what we're accomplishing with Huor, because we had the conversation between Huor and his mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did like the fact that the primary push to leave Huor behind came not as a political sort of an argument for political necessity, but just because mom really wanted to keep, the baby boy home, right?
She just got him back.
Yeah,
She
totally
doesn't want him to
understand.
ride
She
off
doesn't
into
know
battle
him.
Yeah.
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 So it's obviously a callback to Nerdanel asking Feanor to spare her one of their sons.
Right.
And Feanor says, "You can keep all of them if you come with us." So
Whose fault is that, nerd now?
Yeah. So that's kind of what we were doing with that, is that she's
Right.
just not quite okay with letting him ride out. So
Okay. So we see Hurin, his attitude being tempered, as we said a little bit from last time, being willing to follow his father, but no major step forward. There's still the sense of destiny. This is, if anything, this would feel like a sort of affirmation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I show
Yeah.
up and immediately we're going.
Right. Even possibly a little element of, well, Dad,
Vindication.
you suggested that it wasn't the time yet, but it turns out it is, right? After all, here's the call after all.
So he is more or less happy and more or less gung-ho about riding off into battle and doing this. As far as Huor goes, he's gonna do it. That's what he's supposed to do. He's not mad about it or upset,
Right.
but he doesn't necessarily have that same drive that Hurin has. And we needed to give him at least a moment to spend time with his father. Like, because this is it.
Yeah.
This is all they get.
Yeah.
So there had to have been like one quiet conversation of just dads and sons talking together.
Right, because we got that with Hurin, and Hurin and Galdor's relationship is of obvious importance with the whole heir thing and everything.
Yeah.
But I agree,
Yes.
letting Huor have a single conversation with Dad seems seems fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dad addresses the heir thing of,
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
young men who have now grown up, guess what?
Right. Why
Guess
are you
what
not
it's time
married?
to do?
Yes. So, Tolkien heirs who are older than they should be and yet unmarried, as is the custom of so many heirs in Tolkien's world for various reasons that are so hard to understand. Yes. So, because we do get... tell me about how you're hoping to handle the interaction between Hurin and Morwen, because I knew we're getting that the outline refers to Hurin taking notice of Morwen and then Hurin getting teased about it by other people,
Especially his brother.
Yeah.
So that will continue next episode, where
Yeah.
it becomes serious and they have to make decisions about their lives.
So we have a unilateral noticing of Morwen by Hurin is what we get.
Like there would be.
Yes. It is
Yeah.
impossible to imagine Morwen being all gushy about anyone ever.
Yes.
That's
And definitely not in this case.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she will need to be convinced to give him the time of day
Mm-hmm.
next episode.
By people not hurt him.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll get there.
But yeah, we'll get there, and obviously she'll have to make a decision about what to do with her life. But this is showing where there is an
taller than he is?
expectation.
Didn't we say that?
I mean, we said we could. We haven't cast either of them yet.
We haven't cast either of them yet, but we opened the possibility of her being taller.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We said it wouldn't be a bad thing if she were taller.
I mean,
Right.
the Baorians are not generally super
Huge,
tall in
yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
Hurin's just on the shorter side of the Hadorian
Right.
scale.
Right.
But
Well,
Yeah.
the people of Howth are the shortest,
Yeah.
and his mom is of the people of Howth, so he did not get all the growth spurt.
Right.
genes.
No, he got the short genes. I mean, that
Yeah.
happens a lot. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a younger brother who's like 5 to 6 inches shorter than I am. So like that happens. My dad is 6'2", my mom is 5'2". I got the tall genes, he got the short genes. Like it happens all the time, right? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and you can have kids who are taller than their parents or kids
Yep.
who are shorter than their parents.
Yep.
Genetics is really fun with height in particular.
exactly.
Yeah, just how many growth spurts do you get, and what do you do with them when they come?
Like, nutrition has a tremendous...
Nutrition-wise, it's what do you do with those growth spurts when you
Yes.
get them?
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, my son is way bigger than I was at his age.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even close. And my wife is not a tall person either.
Yep.
So there's
Yep.
a very strong chance that he inherited not only the taller genes from my family, but is just getting way better nutrition than... I mean, because I was born in the 80s. Like,
Right.
they still didn't know how to feed babies at the time. They had forgotten how to feed babies.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So he. Do you guys are you? What are you imagining for a context? I'm trying to get the scene in my head. The Hurin spots Morwen, and realizes that she is the most beautiful woman in most beautiful of human women. Like, when does that happen?
So
how does
they're
that
probably
happen?
getting ready to go. Like, it's during preparation for the
It's
the
a
trip.
busy time. People are moving around doing things, and
It's
you
the
know.
perfect time to make observations like that without yourself being observed.
Okay, and
so she's busy doing something, and the light just hits her really well, and he just
is this
stops
meant to
because-
be he's never seen her before,
No,
or
he has
like
seen
he's
her
noticing
before,
her for the
sure.
first time?
But this is the first time he notices her on screen.
Right.
We have not shown him
Okay, so this isn't
acknowledging
necessarily
her presence.
okay.
before.
She's
This is the first
also
time we
older.
see that he is noticing her.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay,
She's also older than the last time that he saw her. Like, that's another, like, because it was...
well, but
No.
I mean, I'm thinking just of episode 2. I mean, like when they were both
They were
around.
separate. They didn't interact.
Yeah.
They didn't interact, but
Because
I
that
mean,
was House of Hador business.
right. But she was there. Morwen was there with Emeldir.
Yeah,
She
I don't
was
think he
there
saw
on the
her.
sidelines.
Okay.
He got up on a box and gave a speech.
Yeah.
She's not even barely watching the horse race.
Right.
He
Like,
was probably
she's just the
paying
face in the
attention
crowd.
to the young men at the time because that was the focus of what he was trying to get done.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, I got that we didn't get him noticing her in during episode 2. My point is just that like they've
This
been
is
around
probably
each
the first
other.
time that he's actually noticed her and gotten a good look at her since they've gotten back.
Right. Okay. Okay. And all right. So she's help. Are we imagining that this is just like a totally she is the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen kind of moment, or is this is like what's he watching her doing? I mean, is it just a physical thing? And it's okay if it is. Like, well, she's the most beautiful of human women. So like
she's probably being capable.
Sure.
I'm sure she's doing something useful, but that's not why he stopped.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. She's very pretty.
That's what I was.
And he is a young man who has been around only elves for like 3 years. So.
And who is about to ride into battle.
Right.
And contemplating his own mortality as one would into something. Right. No. Perfect sense. No judgment. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Right. But
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. We are not doing
it's a very
anything
minor bit of this.
It's called out so that their relationship doesn't come literally out of nowhere in the next episode.
Right. But that's my primary reasons for asking is I just want to make sure it makes total sense. Again, she is the most beautiful of human women. So like totally. I just want to make sure I understand where we're starting. Yes. In episode 4. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're starting with
that,
he thinks she's hot and getting teased by his brother about the fact that his brother saw him seeing that she was hot.
Yes.
Yep.
Gotcha. Great.
That's all that's happened so far.
Perfect. And she didn't notice him noticing.
No.
No. She
Okay.
was busy doing something and didn't
Great.
realize.
Okay. So this is not this issue. Totally not on her radar. Okay, good. Again, just trying to make sure I'm understanding details. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Flo then. All right.
On to the battle.
Enough with this relationship business. Let's get on to tactics.
Let's get some people killed.
Exactly. Okay. So, what we've got here in our first map that we were looking at before. So the purple line is Fingon coming from Barad Ithel. So he's coming down the river valley, and then he cuts north to the place where he expects the orcs to cross, because that's where they usually cross.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least have at some point in the past, yes.
Right. Okay. But he goes and he finds that instead of having crossed there, they've headed south, and so now he's pursuing them from behind, which is not what he expected to be doing.
Right.
Yeah, I believe we have him sitting and waiting for a while, thinking that like they'll be coming any moment now, and then either only scouts show up or
he sees them march by on the other side of the river.
And then I wasn't sure if there were hills, but they do instead bypass the crossing.
Okay, so now he's in pursuit mode, but his now the messages that he sent out, right? He sent out a message to Galdor saying, please, this invitation is to you and your light cavalry to come and assist, right?
Yes.
And Galdor assumes, is informed. Again, the original plan, Fingon's original plan, is the orcs are going to cross the ford, and the men of Dorloman are going to come up behind them and wham.
Right. So the men of Dorloman are intending to meet Fingon at or near the ford.
But they'll be on the west side.
Right.
While Fingon is on the east side.
Right. So they're going to be, and they'll be there
so
too.
No matter what happens, they will
either the orcs are going to go up against Fingon, and then they're going to scatter, and then the men of Dorloman are going to chase them, like you do as when you're light cavalry, or they're going to come in and plow into them from behind and whatever. Okay. Right. So that's what they think is happening. What does Círdan think is happening, and what's he doing? Círdan is marching.
Right. So
from Drengist, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Going back to the big map. Yes. Okay. So he comes down the Firth of Drengist, and
he is at the Firth of Drengist when Fingon opens up already knowing that Círdan is at the Firth
is nearby.
Drengist.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's already on the table. Like this has been an ongoing thing there, so he's like, get Círdan to bring his Marines over here.
Yep.
Essentially with the same instructions that the men of Dorloman have, which is meet me at the ford of the River Mithrim.
Yep.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, so and Círdan he's coming in with Marines, so he's got foot soldiers, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So it takes him a while
To get there.
Right.
Is he? And again, we don't need to see this on screen or anything. But
Right.
is Galdor passing him on the road? Because they're
No.
mounted, right?
Galdor gets there first. Círdan is behind.
Okay.
Right.
I think is the idea. There was a suggestion that Círdan would possibly acquire boats from the
At
Mithrin
Mithrin?
area. Yeah, and then take them up the river. I'm not sure that would be any faster than marching his troop up there, but it would just
It'd be a little more on brand. And
Right. It was more of that so we could have boats.
Yeah.
But also,
So-
I feel like if we did that, it would be confusing because
Where'd the boats come
people
from
would
and-
just assume that they were his boats.
they brought
and how
boats.
did they
Yeah,
get
exactly.
there? Right.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit like, well, we could do that.
Their wagon train probably has boats in it, but
Yeah. No,
they're on a
yeah.
forced march for sure.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So they're on a forced march.
Yeah.
Because if Galdor and his cavalry don't pass Círdan on the road, then Círdan is way
Yeah.
behind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah.
I'm not sure how much delay we have to let Círdan catch up
Mm-hmm.
logistically. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, we can worry about that
So
later.
my solution to that was to have Galdor's group kind of cross the mountains at a different spot.
That's why you have that line going through there. That makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't want them to be marching on the same road.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's no roads. They just cross at random places.
Right.
It's fine.
Well, yeah. So and there would be presumably multiple passes, and they wouldn't go to the furthest north one, right? They would. So yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I can buy that.
So they just happen to not cross paths visually on screen when we see them, on account of we do kind of want Círdan to show up as a surprise.
Right. Okay. Okay.
If we want to see those guys marching on the road in the background of a shot, I guess we could do it. But
no, again, I'm not. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the whole picture of what's happening.
Logistics matter, obviously.
Okay.
And I don't want to hand wave everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Perfectly cool. So I'm seeing where we're going. So now we've got.
However, I would say that.
Oh, look at this. I didn't have to go back for the Firth of Drengist after all. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I would say that another point is that since we've discussed the Asamwe Kenta, it makes all sense in the world to me that Círdan knows when the battle has been joined, and so he moves from just marching his guys up to where we got to do a forced march. We got to get there, and so the
You're right.
endurance
we are
of the
engaging.
Eldar-
We need you right the heck now would be exactly what you would send by telepathy to somebody.
Right, and so that would increase their speed to at least the speed that horsemen get when they're en route.
Yes. Yep. Agreed. Okay. Sorry. So look at this. Here, you see, you were so far ahead of me. I was going back to look at maps, and here. So this is basically the starting locations. Galdor down in the south of Dorloman, Círdan out in the Firth of Drengist, Fingon and the Orc army converging at where Fingon thinks they're going to converge. Okay, gotcha. Now, here is where the first twist happens. Galdor has set out, so he's on his way, and he's gonna be ready to meet them to either destroy them as they flee or to attack them from the rear. And this is the moment when the orcs do the unexpected thing
Yes.
of turning south. Okay.
Yeah. Well, because this is the only crossing. I'm just going to make this decision unilaterally. This is the only crossing between here and the lake.
Yeah.
Once they get to the lake, now they can't freaking cross the river unless they start building pontoon bridges. They got to go all the way around. So it seems unlikely that they would go through all that. But this way, they're putting him on the back foot. They don't want to fight him. Right, the last two armies that they sent over here did that, and they got destroyed to a man.
Do we get any orc perspective on this? Do we have a captain?
We haven't.
Okay.
No, we didn't. We didn't give them a.
So we're only observing the orc army from a distance. We're not.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the general idea was that we're not going to show the Ner'Knife from the point of view of the villains,
Yeah.
right? It's the villain's perspective is going to be opaque to the audience
Mm-hmm.
until her and his Angband and Morgoth can just explain things to him all we want next season. So that it's much worse than
We
you thought
do
it was.
have plenty of opportunity for that.
Right. So
That's true. That's
to
true.
set that up, we didn't want to give orc perspective in this
Okay.
battle skirmish thing
Makes perfect sense.
because of how we're going to tell the rest of the story. So again, we're just trying to set some pieces in place here.
Morgoth is much more of a post-victory monologuer than a pre-victory monologuer.
Right.
Which makes all the sense in the world.
Sure does. Sure does. Okay, great. So Fingon is, excuse me, Fingon is actually camped, right? Like he's arrayed.
Yeah, there's
Waiting.
time to sit there and wait. Yes.
Okay, and then they see the orcs go by, and then they're like, "Well, crap, we've got to move out." Okay.
Yes.
Great. So now,
and Fingon's guys are all on foot. Fingon doesn't have horses with his group.
Right. So
presumably because of walking over mountains and things. I don't know.
Right. So therefore, Galdor is going to meet the orcs before Fingon engages with them at all.
Yes.
Yes.
They're close
Which is
behind.
not the original plan.
That's not the
and
original
we've got
plan.
to adapt. So again, with the what do you show here, it's that the battle plan needs to adapt to the changing circumstance.
And Galdor, like, a frontal assault against a massed army is not what the light cavalry of Dor-Lómin is designed for.
Nope.
So they are
Exactly.
not. This is not like the Norman cavalry charge that we're getting here. So when Galdor comes up and sees the army, the unfought army of orcs headed straight in their direction, he doesn't only just have to realize that the strategy has changed. He has to make some sudden and pretty challenging tactical decisions
Exactly.
as well. And
he can harass them from the front and slow their progress, right? But he's
right. But it's going to be hard because the orcs, do have bows. So
so, like, horse archers are still super effective.
Yeah,
in that
horse
sort of
archers are
circumstance.
super effective. Totally agree. But this is why, thinking ahead probably to the next slide, yes, this is why they split, right? Because they split because they're going to harass either side.
Yes.
Right.
And they're trying to get actually, this is actually a reaction to what Fingon does.
Okay.
In addition to that, so Fingon is now, like, because he's been gaining on the orcs for sure.
Right.
He gets to this point. He sees that the Hadorian cavalry is now face to face with this orc army, and so he charges on the orcs from the rear.
Okay. So, question number one then. Can Galdor see Fingon also? That is, so when Galdor comes up they
can see the armies, each other's armies.
So he comes up and he sees the unexpected orc host, right?
Yes.
He doesn't think the situation, because my first thought was that he was thinking, holy cow, something or other happened. Fingon was supposed to fight these dudes and he didn't. We are the only things that are standing between this orc army and the end. Because if he can see Fingon coming, why does he charge at all? Like, shouldn't he be like, how about we hang back a bit? Fingon's coming, let him engage. He does. Okay.
Yeah, so the order of events is the first thing that happens is the orcs halt. They see a bunch of horses in front of them and are like, oh, okay, no.
Right.
So they stop, and that allows Fingon to
And also Fingon is coming up from behind and they're like, maybe we should turn around and...
So Fingon engages them, and now they're engaging him on that side, and then the orcs in the front have to figure out what to do about the horses. So the horses are responding to the fact that it's a halted army that has engaged with the elves on the other side.
Which is large enough to outflank the elves there. So that's why they rush up on the orcish flanks to keep them pinned into the sides and reach Fingon's flanks where they belong, where they're going to be the most useful.
Right. So their plan is to under the circumstances, that is to say, very at the very beginning of the battle. Like, it would have been one thing for them to come in and attack the orcs from the rear if the orcs were already beating themselves against Fingon's wall in the fort, right? And with the fort also there, potentially constricting them and everything else, right? But because presumably Fingon would have stopped them in a tight place, right? Where he set up his original defenses. But here, with the orcs in the open field, Galdor would see the threat, as you say, that the orcs would not just turn to attack Fingon, they could swarm around and try to surround Fingon, because Fingon's army was not their plan. This is their plan.
Right.
They were, or whatever.
Yeah, holding the ford was something that he had plenty of elves to do.
Right.
This
meeting them on the open field, this was not the plan.
He maybe has enough elves to do.
Right.
But maybe not. Let's find
maybe
out.
Not. Right. Galdor at least would see the risk. So so Galdor's plan.
And also beyond just like the risk of defeat, like casualties.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like you also want to minimize your casualties, especially elvish casualties, not replaceable.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And of course, again, the kind of cavalry that Galdor is leading is not heavy cavalry, so plowing into the orcs from behind is only something they're going to do under a desperate circumstance anyway. So they're going to divide in half, and they're going to go up the flanks of the orcs. Galdor's move, that is going between the orcs and the river, that's a gutsy move.
Yes.
That's a really gutsy move.
Yes.
It is.
We want
and that's why he doesn't send his sons that way.
Yes. Right. He sends his sons the way that if it goes really bad, they can get away.
They can get away. Yeah.
Right? Also, he knows it kind of has to be done because the orcs could still swarm around and get around around Fingon's side. But we also want to demonstrate that Hurin was wrong about Galdor.
Galdor's not timid. Yeah.
Right. Demonstrate again is probably, but it's been years. It's been
right.
And he was traumatized by the Dagobah. So we want to illustrate that this guy has still got it.
Right.
Is still willing to go to daring lengths to honor his relationship with the High King.
And the answer to the question, because I feel like there needs to be an answer to the question, why doesn't he just keep them all together and all go up the left front flank and use the river to pen the orcs in on the right-hand side?
Right.
We could answer this like topographically, I suppose. Like the orcs don't have to be right up against the river when they're marching, right? So when the engagement happens, they could be, 500 yards from the river, which would give them lots of room to spread, or a quarter mile from the river or whatever.
I would say 100 yards is probably where, because you'd want it wide enough for Galdor to be able to ride through with some expectation that he's going to make it to the end, but also not so wide a gap that they can't pin him in.
Right.
So there is risk. But it's not that they're right along the river and he's like got to fight his way through the orcs to make progress.
Right. No, but the problem is if it's too close, then the obviously smarter thing to do is like the river's right there. So just there's no threat that the orcs are going to get around Fingon on that side.
But also the way that they are able to hem the orcs in is not by slamming into them either.
Right.
Like it's by getting at them from a certain level of distance. Even they probably have lancers as well, but their job is essentially to ride over, skewer an orc, and ride off.
Right. They're still going to be slashing at the flanks rather than
and so they need space to do that. As soon as the orcs start widening their position to envelop Fingon, right, that's going to start cutting Galdor off. So he's gambling that he's going to be able to get through the gap quickly enough, and it's a gamble that fails on him, but
not entirely.
Well, yeah, for him it does.
Right.
Well, not he's not wrong.
Yeah,
like he does make it.
Right.
It does. I realize he doesn't survive this battle, but that's
what I'm.
But that's random chance more than anything. It's not that this was a bad tactic or that he got pushed in the river.
Okay.
Oh, I think he did the only thing the best thing he could have done under the circumstances.
That's what I'm wanting to make sure I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Because again, the one thing that I'm still struggling with is why did he need to do it?
Right. Why not just
go around the other side?
And push all the orcs towards the river. If there's
we
a
want
gap,
to keep them hemmed in and not surrounding Fingon. Makes all kinds of sense. But again, if there's only 100 yards between them and the river, there's only so far they can spread out, right? Like, basically, if Fingon can anchor his left flank on the river, then he's got no problems, right? The orcs can't do anything on that side, and Galdor doesn't need to charge up that side.
Right. So it just has to be close enough that the orcs could realistically fill that gap, right? Like that he has to be in actual peril by the time they get there.
Okay, and obviously, like, the tactical situation doesn't have to be explained in excruciating detail in the episode, but
it has to visually make sense on screen, though.
Here's what I'm thinking visually. With Fingon, because again, this is the other challenging thing is, remember, Fingon is a great tactician, right? So we can't have Fingon making a stupid blunder that Galdor has to bail him out from, right? That's the other issue here. So Fingon was charging, right?
I think this is answered by Fingon's faith that
Galdor's
forces are going to
is going to do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm imagining that the river, and of course, obviously, the scale of our armies and the map are wildly out of proportion here, right?
Yes.
So, by necessity, right? But okay, so
yes,
if I'm imagining that, because this battle, Fingon did not choose this battlefield, right?
Right.
Fingon has not deployed his army for battle. They were in pursuit,
right?
And they accelerated their pursuit into a charge and laid into them from the back. So he will have some, ability to, like, array his forces in the charge, but certainly, very limited. And so if the moment at which they happen to catch the orcs was at a place where the river, I'm imagining, like, so there's that sort of narrow 100-yard gap, right? But that it widens out soon after that. Like, there's, like, because the river bends, right?
Yes.
And Fingon, because of the angle that he came in, he would have to, like, he's not been able to, again, he's not arrayed his lines. He was just charging down. He would have to stretch his line and jeopardize his line. In other words, like, basically there's like a race. If the orcs make it to that place where it opens up, then they could surround him on that side. If not, but Fingon doesn't have anybody, because he doesn't have the cavalry, right? He doesn't have cavalry with which he could plug that gap that will keep the orcs from going around into that larger area, that's right up there on their left flank.
So Galdor seeing that
is like
the problem.
Yeah, I mean, he can even point, or he can even say to Hurin, like, that gap, like, we have to fill that gap to prevent them from flanking Fingon on that side, right?
Yeah. And a thing occurred to me about the difference between Fingon's battlefield leadership and Maedhros's battlefield leadership. So Maedhros, in this situation, is micromanaging his captains and telling them, you go here, you go there.
Yep.
Like, he sets up, he probably doesn't make this quite as impetuous a charge, right? And he sets up his approach a lot more methodically, and gives instructions to his guys as to what exactly they're meant to do.
Yes.
Fingon is not that kind of battlefield leader. He expects his captains, he has faith in them and expects them to do the right thing because they're the ones who are closest to their situation and are going to make the best decisions about what they're supposed to do.
Wouldn't it be cool if Hurin says to Galdor, Dad, you sure, like, are you sure that's a good idea? Right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty narrow gap. What if they trap you with the river? And Galdor could say something like, not only does Fingon need me, not in the sense that Fingon needs me to rescue it, right? But, like, this is what Fingon expects me to do.
Right.
And he's like, how do you know? And he's like, because this is what needs, like, trust.
Right.
Like, I know this is what Fingon,
Yes.
this is what Fingon needs.
But also he can kind of make fun of him a little bit. It's like, that's a little timid for you, son.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's the right thing to do. Yeah, no, I agree. Right. And Fingon after the battle would be like, yeah, that was just what was supposed to happen. Right. Like I was not worried about my left flank because I knew that you would be coming.
He would be there.
Yeah. I knew that you would be there. Yeah.
But you're right, Marie. Like I had forgotten that he actually does make it, and he's killed after he runs in. He encounters Fingon, and then he gets shot. I had forgotten that. That's my mistake.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want him to have done something too reckless and got himself killed.
Yes.
Like that wasn't the story we were telling.
Yeah.
Right.
There will be recklessness, but not from Galdor.
Right. Okay, so Hurin has and knows he has the safer
Yes.
path. Right.
Yes.
Not only the more obviously escapable.
That doesn't
path.
even have to be
No. I mean that's very clear. It's not only that like he can obviously get away anytime he needs to, because he does not have the river penning him in, and it's less risky. But again, even just the urgency, right? I mean, on the one hand, Fingon's right flank, right, that is the side that Hurin is going up. Is the one at greater risk because the orcs can spread out there more easily, right? So it's not like his job is unimportant, but it's just obviously less risky.
But also, it's actually to their benefit to make less contact with the orcs on their way over, because they actually don't want to be pressuring them towards the river.
Right.
However, I'll bet you anything that all of the guys from the horse race are here.
Yeah, with Hurin.
Yes. Like all of the fastest riders are here because they have a longer way to go.
Yes. Their role is more like they're the sheepdogs, right. Of this part of the plan, right? Galdor is the spear, and Hurin are they're the herd dogs.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Okay. Then Galdor gets there, right? Though it looks like it's collapsing, right? The orcs are trying to pin them against the river, right?
Yes.
But Galdor and his men fight through. Galdor gets to Fingon, and then is shot.
Yes. It looks like it's going to go great.
Right. Everything's going according to the plan.
Yes.
Okay. And is Galdor going to die, like, with Fingon? I mean, is Fingon going to be right there when Galdor...
Yeah, talks to him
pretty much.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be talking to him, and then like right after he talks to him.
Yeah.
And we're doing the arrow in the eye. Like he's gonna deliberately foreshadow Huor is the plan.
It's definitely an arrow strike. So a fatal arrow strike. It's probably got to be an eye or a neck.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like,
I'd be
to what extent are we directly
we have a lot of arrows in the eye. A lot. We have two. We have Huor and we have Arathorn.
Right.
Which happens in the very first episode of the show.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So if we would prefer this to
that
be
was both a long time
fatal,
ago and a long time in the future. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yes.
If you don't want an eye, it could be a throat wound, but it has to be an arrow.
Just a sudden fatal arrow wound. Yeah.
Yes. Where a single arrow is fatal is the idea.
Yeah.
And this is not a Boromir situation where he keeps fighting through all the arrow wounds.
Okay. Why? And I'm not saying that I see a reason for this. Just asking. Why do you feel that it's best for him to die swiftly and suddenly, as opposed to succumbing to his wounds after the battle?
Because Hurin has to be able to see it happen and know that's Dad's
Mm-hmm.
to trigger Hurin's berserk response. Is the answer. Okay.
Right. So this is not Galdor's story. This is Hurin's story.
Yeah.
And the shock of the suddenness of his dad's death is what we're conveying. So it needs to happen in a way that the audience isn't like, he's in a bad situation. It's getting worse. And then he dies. It has to be he made it. Everything's great. And boom.
Everything's going according to plan. And then boom. And then Hurin, I mean, is it like a going berserk thing? Like he just...
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we want to also get that from Hurin. right?
Yeah.
Like we want to see Hurin unchained, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Hurin does at this point is not tactically wise
Right.
or strategically wise or just wise in any way whatsoever.
And yet still almost pays off.
Right. He plows straight into the. So he takes his sheepdogs,
Yep.
and he turns and punches straight into the orc army. Is this a? I mean, I imagine it could be both. Is this a? I'm just going to go after and kill the orcs for vengeance thing, or is this a? I'm taking the shortest line
It's the shortest
between me and
route
death?
to his dad.
Yeah,
and
but
he's real mad at the orcs right now too.
Right.
So let's just kill a bunch of orcs.
It's a win-win situation from that.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the Lancers, so I would say that the archers probably don't follow him in,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the Lancers do, and so you got to figure that their cavalry are probably made up of equal parts Lancers and archers.
And archers, yeah.
Right. And so all of these guys peel off and just right into the side,
plow straight through. Yeah.
Right. And it's not like if Celegorm's cavalry did. If Celegorm's cavalry do that, these guys get massacred.
Right. I'm thinking of the way that they depicted the cavalry charge in the film at the Battle of Pelennor Field, right, where they're coming in and the orcs are just like thump, 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 thump. I mean, you know, they're just kind of.
Right.
That's not this.
No.
No.
No. It's rough going.
Yes.
Right. Like they're having to abandon their very useful spears and go to the inferior weapon of the sword.
Yes.
And like it's just yeah.
I was expecting you to say that. Yes. I hear you.
So they're hacking and forcing their way through, but that's not what they were supposed to do, clearly.
No. This is not what they're not only is this not part of the plan, this does not even fit like their whole style of battle. Like they're not. This is not.
Right.
This is
so
not
the
what light
orcs
cavalry
were really
is supposed
surprised.
to do. Right.
Yeah.
They were not expecting this move.
Right. Right.
But that's the only advantage to it, is that they have a lot of very surprised orcs going, what?
Right. Right.
And they make it most of the way there.
Yeah.
But this charge is losing momentum as it goes.
Yeah.
And they are not gonna make it all the way there before their momentum is gone, or before a horse gets shot out from under somebody or something.
So how does Fingon respond?
Right. So he is able to immediately, like we cut away from Hurin. He's still going like blazes, right? Yeah. It's still gangbusters in there, but Fingon looks in there and is like, oh, that's gonna be
not okay.
Terrible.
yeah. This is yeah.
Right. And his guys are saying like, we could get surrounded here. Like this could be terrible.
This is sort of the opposite outcome to what the plan, the whole
this
Galdor
whole thing could fall apart in our hands here. And he refuses to leave for sure, because if he leaves, like all these guys are dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even if he just stays where he is. I mean,
right.
He has no choice but to charge to rescue Hurin or let Hurin die.
Right. Right.
How do Galdor's, the other half, Galdor's people, what do they, do we see them? Are they just kind of with Fingon now? They're just joined in?
Right. Well, so he has them kind of like come around past them so that they can do their job properly.
Yeah.
Right. So we didn't call this out in the outline. It was getting pretty late by the time we got here. I would say that he has his guys all start shifting to the right.
To the right, yeah.
Right. So they're trying to almost pivot around the body of the orc army,
because the orcs would start collapsing in on Hurin.
Right. So he's trying to rotate them so that now they have their cavalry flanking them like they're supposed to, right? And he's able to use that. So basically, they're rotating and pushing forward to try to give some relief to the orcs that are surrounding Hurin at this point.
Right. Do we see, is there any kind of like sort of spearhead charge in towards, like, to try to reach Hurin?
I feel like that's rash.
Hurin's on his own on this one.
Yeah.
He made this call, and Fingon's gonna stay and fight.
Like, he's going to do the best he can to make it.
But he's
But we're not going to get
just,
a rash heroic rescue on the part of Fingon or any of his captains. Yeah.
Which means this would have ended real badly for Hurin. Except there's one more army.
Right.
Yeah. Fortunately, Fingon has faith in the people he commands to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, they do. So also, he might be aware of the impending relief from Círdan as well.
Right. As, hey, Chief,
Wicked.
we're just down the road now. We'll be there in 5 minutes is also another thing I would send telepathically if I had that capability. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So Círdan comes up. The Marines of Círdan come in and they plow into what is now definitively the rear of the orcs who have been turned around in every direction by this point.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the orcs just break at that point?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, they complete...
Right.
Like,
Right.
as
Hurin
for
threw
all
everything
they
into
know,
disarray.
Hurin's charge was part of the plan.
Right.
And, like, they're just getting rocked.
Right. Okay. So what we are seeing, despite the very poor tactics and planning of Hurin, we are, however, also seeing his very great personal prowess.
Yes.
There's a reason he does not die in this battle.
Yes.
When he for sure should have.
And this is awesome. What I love about this is that Tolkien tells us, but asks us to take almost completely on faith that Hurin is the mightiest of all of the warriors of the human warriors of the Elder Days. But the only thing we ever see Hurin do on the battlefield in the Silmarillion is tell Fingon not to attack. Right? I mean, like, we never see him in battle anywhere else ever, do we?
Well, the very end of the battle when he kills 70 orcs.
Well, okay, well, yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah.
we see that
in the Fens of Sarek, yes, of course.
Yes,
Yeah,
we see the Fens of Sarek. But you're right. Other than the Fens of Sarek, we do not see any of his fighting. Presumably, he fought for 4 days in the Nirnaeth because the entire Nirnaeth took place over 4 days.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't talk about this. Does Huor stay back with the archers?
Right. I was assuming Huor was with him, but
I mean, Huor's dad just died too.
Yeah, that's fair. But also, I feel like he's got a different psychological makeup, and he's not going to follow Hurin blindly like these other guys are.
Right. We could discuss that. There is the third guy who is also prepared to be heir.
Yeah.
So his whereabouts are not determined, and he for sure is not charging in anything.
No.
So if he went with the other two guys, he's staying back.
It would be kind of fun to have the guy who was the heir and was planning to be the Lord act more wisely on the battlefield than Hurin.
Yeah. Yeah.
He could have been with Galdor though. Like if the two, if Hurin and Huor went with one side, he could be with Galdor on the other side.
I like the idea of him holding together.
I would want to have somebody
like he regains order on the northern flank, on the left flank.
So he's with them, and therefore it's fine.
And could also, by the way, therefore lead the pursuit.
Yes. Because that's not something that Hurin's involved in.
No.
Right.
So then where do we want...
That's even in the very unlikely event Hurin still has a horse.
Yes.
Right.
By this time. Yeah.
So where do we want Huor then? Do we want him with Galdor? With Hurin and Gellor?
I would say that he's still... Because Galdor still wants to keep both these guys as safe as possible. So we can have him with Hurin.
I think he's with Hurin.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So he's on that side.
Yeah. He's the only one who doesn't foolishly throw away his spear.
Does he charge in with Hurin though?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he does. Okay. Not because again, psychologically he's very different, but
he is.
I think it's important for us to establish, even when he differs from Hurin, he's there. He's not going to leave him.
Yeah.
He's
So there'll be like
Hurin's
a
right-hand
moment
guy.
of like, where are you going?
Right, exactly. Huor can be like, holy crap, this is a horrible idea, right? I mean,
And still follows him.
And
Yeah.
he still follows him. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
That's fine. I wanted to differentiate. Again, 3 different reactions instead of just 2.
Yes. Yep. It's so convenient. But
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
Yeah, no,
Don't
I
pretend you planned that.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. No, I think who are being at risk, who are being with Hurin no matter what. Because there's there's going to be an obvious opportunity. I mean, I think there would be an opportunity for Huor to leave before the Fens of Sarek, right? I mean, like he doesn't have to. I mean, theoretically, I think that's certainly a situation we could create. There could be a moment where Hurin's like,
you and a small group can get out of here
yes,
and go back and save our people.
Yes, like at least bring word to our people of what happened, right? And let them not be leaderless.
Go be with your young pregnant wife.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's lots of things he could have said to his brother, and we could have him say some of those things.
Plenty of opportunity. I'm
good right here.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, but just establishing that Huor is gonna stick with Hurin no matter what, I think is
agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think that works. Okay.
Oh, also Galadriel and Celeborn talk in this episode.
Yeah, we should cover that briefly before we're done. They also agree to go their separate ways.
Yes.
They do.
So Celeborn so she tells Celeborn, hey, was talking to Treebeard, I got a big plan, right? Here's my big plan. And Celeborn, it's not that he's not into her plan. They don't disagree, right?
Right.
He's just like, I've got a different plan.
He believes in her and her plan.
Right. Okay.
But her vision is not his vision.
Right. So this is I was going to say divide and conquer. That's a really poor metaphor in this circumstance. But they're going to divide and contribute in their separate ways, basically.
Right. So what she's looking for is support from him.
Yes.
Like, hey, new plan. Great idea I just had. I want to go do this. Let's you and I go do this.
Yes.
Because they're a married couple who has been together since they got married.
Yeah.
And she's kind of just assuming that she's going to be talking him into joining her on this venture, which is the first time the venture's been explained to the audience as well, because she didn't tell Treebeard.
All we just got was the planting of the seeds by Treebeard.
Right. So this is where she lays out the plan.
Yeah.
And Celeborn's like, yeah, great idea. No, I'm not going.
Right.
And
so that's a surprise.
It is. It's not what she expected to hear. So we have to show where their marriage is right now and why they're allowed to go their separate ways. And
it's
why
not the time of the children.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a time of war. And Celeborn had a role in Doriath.
Yeah.
During a war.
Yes.
And during times when you need diplomats and interacting with other peoples, he's thinking that maybe Thingol needs a diplomat in the coming years.
I have a sneaking feeling that Thingol needs help on the diplomacy front, right? Yeah.
I can't imagine what could give anyone that idea.
Exactly, yeah. He's got this wild theory that, No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Things have gone spectacularly well for Thingol and his relationships with other people since Celeborn has not been there.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
Okay. So Galadriel's going to be surprised, but this is not a like, I am shocked and betrayed and I could never imagine this. It's just that's not how I thought this was going to go.
Right. And that's where she has to recognize that he is supporting her plan.
Right.
Because he's believing that she's right and war's coming.
Right. And so in a backhanded way, he's not going to support directly what she's doing, but he is basically saying, you are right that we have a responsibility to do our part in the war that is coming, right? You are right to be proactive about this. But I have a different proactive calling, right? I have a different calling that I need to pursue proactively also, and it's over there.
Yes. He does tell her not to go alone, though.
Okay.
So he is, at the very least, not saying, hey, great idea. Cross the mountains, meet a strange group of people we've never interacted with.
Have a great
before.
time. I'm sure you'll be
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So he doesn't just send her off. He does say, take a friend.
Right. Right.
Preferably one
buddy
above,
system.
relative above.
Buddy system. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah. So, and this is gonna be a challenge in a couple different ways. Like, this is one of those moments where we have the opportunity to do one of those elves don't think like humans thing.
Yeah.
Right. It would be really weird for a human couple in this kind of a situation just to be like, so let's, just go different ways. I mean, not that you wouldn't leave the one behind, or I mean, like, that kind of thing happens all the time. I'm just saying that one of the things about like elf marriage that is strange to the human is the whole like totally normal to like separate for a few decades.
Yeah.
I'm thinking from a human perspective, right? It would be the equivalent of separating for a few decades and then maybe we'll get together again later on, right? Like, that would seem like in a human relationship, people would be like, there's something, this is a relationship issue. Like, they need
something is very wrong.
Something's
here,
very wrong here,
okay.
right? This marriage is not working out, right? And so we have to somehow convey, this doesn't mean that their marriage isn't working out.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Both
So
of them
that's
accept
where-
this as a normal thing, even though it's not what she
he's
expected.
supportive of her, and she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you like the idea then, and I'll make my own plans, I guess." So it's a twist, but not a disappointment, I guess. At the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, conveying that is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Especially since there's only 2 scenes to work with that here. So.
And they can't tell each other, as you know, elves do this sort of thing all the
Right.
time.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially since they have no non-elf interlocutor to assist with that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they have that conversation at Baron and Luthien's house, but I feel like we need to be away from the dead that lived for a long while.
And I was also going to say, we do have, that's the other thing that we're kind of fighting against, right? Is that we did just get the whole really big deal made out of Baron and Luthien, I'm not going to leave you ever, and like, I'm going to, like, we did, and Luthien is like, very elvish, so it's going to be notably different from the big relationship we just had in the last season. So,
but that relationship had, a timeline, a very short timeline.
It's true. It's true.
And this one doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously anyone could die at any time.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But
exactly.
They fully expect to see one another later.
Yeah.
And to reunite, and they've had their honeymoon time together for the last few hundred years. So they're ready to go do other things.
No,
now.
but this is exactly what I mean when I say that we've got to, it's the challenge. I think it's a fun challenge, but the challenge is when we get these opportunities.
Sounds like they're breaking up.
Yeah, it does. It does. Or like even potentially even a betrayal. I mean, like,
when he says, "No, I'm just not interested in going," but you go ahead and do that.
I mean, how easy is it to imagine the internet rants about what a horrible husband Celeborn is, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like, seriously.
Sending his wife off in, like,
right.
One of the most powerful elves ever, according to some people.
Yeah, thanks, honey. No, you're fine. Yeah, no, it'll be good. I'll just be over here. No, exactly. I mean, it's so. It's not to say how can we prevent that, because you can't prevent people from misunderstanding and overreacting. But how can we anticipating that that's going to be a very natural response
in a way that makes it
Yeah.
because they are elves and they just think like elves, so to them it comes across as normal.
Yeah.
But I think having her feel surprised but not betrayed or disappointed will get the point across that somehow this is okay.
Right.
And they could even say, "I'll see you soon."
Right.
Well, like years from now.
Right. I'll see you soon, in like a couple centuries. But even if at their parting, their parting is, it's not wistful, but not only is it not wistful in a like, oh, like I won't be able to, like, I'll miss you so much kind of deal. But even like when they part from each other, they part from each other in a like, okay, go team. Like, this is us. This is us working together. Yeah, let's do this. Exactly. Right. Let's do this. Right. You do you, and I'm gonna do me, and then we'll meet up again later on, and this is perfect. Right. I mean, like that's kind of the atmosphere. Not
to take their story too far ahead, because we failed to do that in the session that we were supposed to plan Galadriel's story for the rest of the
rest of time.
Right, yeah, essentially. What if they don't meet back up at the end of the season, but that she goes off into what will become regular Middle-earth, right? And when he catches up to her, she is the elf witch of terrible power that is described by the Rohirrim, right? And he brings her back down.
He's got to bring her back in.
It is true that we're going to have a lot of chaos at the end of the season as far as who ends up where. Celeborn is going to end up wherever Beleg and Mabling end up,
right?
Which is not the Fens of Sarek.
Also, well, okay. Here's
Galadriel's going to end up somewhere in East Beleriand.
The fall of Doriath looms really large in the future of both Galadriel and Celeborn. We got to figure that out.
I guess, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We had wanted her to be there.
Oh, and he at least has to be.
Well, yeah, for sure.
I mean, has to be. So the question
he thinks
then,
it's important to go home for this.
Yeah.
He's not going to leave.
Like, I mean, he would be right there with Dior, obviously. Right. I mean, no question.
So I would say, if we go with my current suggestion, she is off screen for the rest of the First Age, and we don't see her again until the Second Age.
I think that's probably not a choice we're going to want to make.
I think that's a decision we don't make tonight, but yeah.
Right, yeah,
but
for sure.
I think we will want to have her end up in Doriath at some point, or an Assyrian.
I think it's too much for her
interacting
to miss.
With Nimloth, and on the Nimloth Dior side of things.
But I hear you. I do like the trajectory of her. The whole he's got to bring her back again. Her getting a little out of control and him helping bring her back.
Yeah,
later.
We can get there. That can be a Second Age storyline for her.
It could even be a.
Well, I mean, coming off of her failure here seems a great moment to
It does. It's just there's so much road between here.
I hear you.
There. You know,
we can talk about
to
it
have one of our
main
main characters that we're going to carry through all 3 ages of Middle Earth disappear from screen
for 6 years
or 6 seasons. Is
that's a long
pretty serious choice to make, and I don't think the payoff would be worth it. I think it'd be better to tell a story with her, and get her to a point where we can then tell that story.
Especially since we have so much scope to like that is the amount of story we have to make up. What
Galadriel does in the Second Age is all about.
Not only that, I mean, like, goodness, like we not only do we not know what Galadriel's involvement in the fall of Doriath or the lead up to the third kinslaying is, we don't know what anybody's. We know what practically nobody is doing there. We have so much space to invent storylines. Like we have so much necessity to invent storylines between here and the end of the. I mean, other outside of the few that we know, like the Gondolin, storyline and the Turin storyline. But yeah, whole fall of Doriath and the lead up to like the second and third kinslaying. I mean, it's like practically a blank slate, the whole thing. So we have lots of opportunity to put her in a parallel or even worse situation that this is preparing. That this is preparing her for, and then that sends her off on that other tailspin.
I've got some stuff. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. I like it. All right.
Yeah.
So the funeral of Galdor is where we kind of end up the main thrust of the story.
Okay. We finish it there. Yeah.
Right. You have Fingon actually exchanging words with Hurin, but the person who really impacts Hurin is Emeldir. Where it's to her that he admits that even though he's prepared for this his entire life, he's not ready. Like,
Yeah.
he's not ready for Dad to not be there. He's not ready to lead all these people. Clearly, like, look what just happened.
Right.
And she assures him, like, nobody, absolutely nobody was ever ready.
Right. Yes. So this is the moment, like his response to his own very questionable battlefield choice
Right.
shakes his confidence in his sense of his destiny and his leadership ability more than anything that's happened. Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave Hurin at the end of episode 3 at like his self-confidence nadir, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, he comes right back and proposes to the most beautiful woman in the
Well,
world.
that's the path out from the nadir,
Yeah, okay.
right? But this moment,
Yeah.
right? Dad's
This is the
funeral
lowest point.
is the lowest point.
The other point where he's very low is with the death of Lilith during the plague.
That's a different.
It's a different kind of
It's a
low,
different.
yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
different kind. But
It's not
he
a
also-
self-confidence low, exactly.
He probably is questioning his ability
Well,
to
he
lead his
couldn't
people.
protect his own child. Like
Yeah.
that's what I would.
That's a
I
helplessness
would be feeling.
thing.
I would
Yeah.
think, though, that what the question that he's having there is not himself. I mean, yes, inevitably one would say, "Why couldn't I protect my child?" But I think that moment is his theological crisis, not
Yeah.
his.
How
not
can
his-
anybody defeat this guy?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he
Who
has
holds
this
the
sense
power
of
over life
destiny
and
and
death.
like the I've been chosen by the guy. I'm again like I'm burdened with glorious purpose, right?
Yeah.
And then the plague and the life dies, right? And so yeah, I would think the question of like, I thought that Manwë chose me, but can Manwë even handle it, right? Like
Manwë is kooky dukes.
right? I mean, he's not capable, right? Like anyway, like that seems to me like again more
How
of a
could he not
theological
protect
crisis
us from
than-
this plague that came on the wind?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but again, so as far as low
Different
points,
types of crises. Yeah.
this is the crisis of his own self-confidence, self-image,
Correct.
and
Correct.
concept of his own leadership and purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so we see, and it's his conversation with Emeldir, which will plant the seeds for his emergence out of that in
Yeah.
the next episode. Okay. Good. No, that makes good sense. This all works. This is good. Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. So next time, episode 4, we get high romance. We get right. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
For certain values of romance.
I'm being a
People
little
can
bit sorry. I
decide to
don't
get
know.
married
Don't
without
tell me.
romance.
No spoilers. No spoilers. Don't tell me. I'm just. Yeah. So we've got romance. We've got intrigue, sports, everything.
Fencing, fighting.
Exactly. True love.
True one.
That's it. It's all
Beautiful
there.
ladies.
Yeah. Okay. That's episode 4 in a nutshell, right there. Okay, good. So, and that will be not 2 weeks from today, but 3 weeks from today, on Thursday, August 1st. I will be at Comic-Con in 2 weeks today. So
Very cool.
I will
Enjoy.
be. Yes, I don't know. Something will be happening on Thursday night. I don't know exactly what's going to be happening on Thursday night, but I'm hoping
Yeah, you'll be busy.
I'm hoping to get the chance to tell Maxim Baldry that he was cast as Myglin. Is one of my that's on my very short list of things to accomplish at Comic-Con. Basically,
Yes.
I have
I
reason
can't
to
wait
suspect.
to hear about that for sure.
I have reason to suspect that I will get a chance to tell Maxim Baldry this, and I fully intend to do that.
Yes.
Enjoy.
And then I'll ask needless to say, I'll ask to be in touch with his agent, so that we can, iron out the details of that situation. Yeah. The next goal, by the way, would be. Actually, no. Let me just ask you right now. If I get a chance to ask Maxim Baldry to recite a Myglin line,
Oh dear.
for us, right? I'm imagining
Yeah.
on my phone.
You're right. Just I want to record you saying one thing.
What thing should I ask him to say?
The line to the line to Hearn and Huar about how Turgon is
The King's grace is great indeed line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
that's just dripping.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It fits well, and it's not.
Okay.
I mean, the guy doesn't have a lot of lines.
No, I mean, of course, like some of Mygwin's great moments are not verbal,
Right.
Like
so I think that's probably his best
Okay.
line.
The King's grace is great indeed. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I will. I'll try to have that accessible. If I do get the chance to meet Max and Baldry, I'll try to have that line accessible. See if I can
read it off your phone.
Yeah, you can read it off my phone.
It would be like the only piece of SilmFilm recorded by the actual actor cast.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
right.
So just have a Lana script with you and let him read the line.
That's what I was going to do. I was going to use the Lana script. Yeah. Exactly.
This is going to be a banner year for SilmFilm. We had our first stunt.
Our first stunt. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No
one
be
was
good.
harmed in the production of that stunt. Thankfully.
That's good. Fortunately. Yeah. That was good. Try not to hurt anybody. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Anyway, so we'll see. I'll report back and let you know if I'm able to connect with Max and Baldry about his big break. But anyway,
I have great news for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm gonna say. Like I can't. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. So we'll see. It'll be good. All right.
Awesome.
So that's where I'll be next Thursday. Possibly the Thursday after next. The normal time for SilmFilm may very well be right around the time when I will have that chance. So anyway, so I'll be in San Diego. We'll be back the week after that. So Thursday, August 1st will be when we will talk about episode 4. And you guys are on episode 6 of script discussion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For next week,
For next week. So next week, the 19th. So next Friday, the 19th at 8 p.m.
We are planning. I got the go ahead. We are planning to do episode 7 the following Friday also. So
on the 26th. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 2
episodes
episodes in back-to-back weeks.
Go together, so it would be nice to discuss them when we still remember what we had discussed for the first one.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, as always, Nick and Marie. That was a really fun discussion. I really enjoyed our tactical discussion and getting... I love the way this season is coming together. So, yeah.
You need a cigar when you say that.
It's going to be great. This season is going to be great. I'm telling you. This is gold. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys in 3 weeks. Thanks for listening, and Godspeed.